Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you talk about experience, and you mentioned a moment ago that we're losing the senior guy, I talk about this sometimes in some seminars. I say it's important to get that guy back. What I mean by that, invite him for breakfast,
Absolutely.
invite him for lunch,
100%.
and let him tell a story or two, and just listen and take mental notes, take handwritten notes, and when you open that door for him and he starts to talk, you shut the TV off and let him talk about the fire in 1978 or 1989, whatever it may be.
Yep.
And I guarantee you're going to be picking up a lot of good points.
I love that because, those relationships then on the back step or on that front porch or up on that gooseneck ladder making your way to that roof, those relationships matter.
Yes, absolutely.
That's when that is the epitome of when it matters most. Mm-hmm. The trust, the friendship, the laughter, the sadness, all of that is getting that job done and doing that job correctly.
And I think it's important, though, in addition to what you're saying, if you have an experience like that, like I did with Frankie, you take that and you pass that on. And you pass the passion.
You have an obligation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And hopefully somebody else will have a Frankie that maybe I introduced them to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, it's Rob, National Fire Radio. Very excited to be here in the studio tonight with Jeremy, Tucker, Heather, and our guest. It's Deputy Chief Michael Terpak from the Jersey City Fire Department.
That's correct.
Retired.
Yes, sir.
So I'm excited. I've heard a lot of good things here. Jeremy's been like a schoolgirl, just giddy. About having you on the show.
Chief, I'll tell you this. We've had such an incredible cadre of guests to come on this show. And in the 2.5 years we've been doing this, I consider myself fortunate every single time I get to sit in the seat and share stories. Maybe have a couple pops, share some stories. And tonight is one of those nights where I'm super excited because you and I have never met before.
No.
And,
I'm surprised, too.
Yeah. I mean, listen, you've been doing this for a few years now. It's not my first day, but our circles, I guess, haven't met. Right. But I think after tonight, certainly we'll be.
I'm glad we finally did.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And so I want to thank you for being here tonight with us. This is a true pleasure for myself and talking to Rob tonight and Tucker and Heather about who you are. And I don't really know you that well. I know you through what you've done, your contributions for the fire service. Not only are you a retired deputy chief out of Jersey City, New Jersey, but you're also an author. Penwell, fire engineering, you name it. I mean, you are certainly mixed up in the training crowds and with your literature that you've published and authored and so on. So I just want to thank you, first off, for taking time out tonight to sit with us.
Honestly, it's my pleasure. I'm finally glad that we were able to have a meeting and hook up.
Absolutely. And a little side note to that, right? We were supposed to do this once before. I had to postpone it for some reasons. And we've chatted back and forth for a while, too, to get this date together. But after hearing you're more busy now after retirement than you were...
Yeah, somewhat, yes. I mean, I am busy. I'll say this quite honestly. I do miss the firehouse very much.
I'm sure.
I miss the guys and girls. I miss the conversations at the kitchen table. I miss the bells, the whistles. I don't miss the administrative side. People telling me I couldn't hire overtime for the day or whatever that may be. But I do miss the firehouse, to put it simply. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to think a night like tonight hopefully will help you feel like you're back there for a little bit.
I loved walking in the front door tonight. I really did.
That's cool.
I had a blast. That was fun.
That's cool. Well, welcome and thank you. So I want to hop in, man. An hour and a half podcast goes super quick. So what I want to hop in is I really just want to get the backstory of who, Deputy Chief Terpak is and where you came from and how you got to where you are.
Okay. I'll start at the beginning,
Yeah,
I guess.
please. I'd love to hear it.
I'm originally from Pennsylvania, to be quite honest with you. I was born in Carbondale, Pennsylvania, outside of Scranton.
Right.
Okay. And my dad, believe it or not, talk about family, he was a volunteer firefighter in a local town in Mayfield, PA. Now, I don't know if I had that in my genes from him. When we moved to Jersey, I was only one, and he moved out here, obviously, because there was more opportunity for employment. At the young age of 8, 9, 10, I was chasing fire trucks on my bicycle.
Such a common theme
Yeah,
in this
honestly,
room.
right?
Yeah.
And at the age of 16, the day I turned 16, I banged on the door of Singac Fire Company 3, not too far from here in Little Falls, and I said, "Let me in. I know you're in there. Let me in." And they did. And I became a junior firefighter, auxiliary firefighter at the age of 16, back in the early 70s.
Wow. Okay.
And I think from there I caught the fever, caught the bug, and I said, I want to be able to do this for a living. And that's how it started.
Yeah.
And it just took off from there.
It's nice to see, one, that a junior program existed in the 70s to get younger kids hooked, right? I mean, I think that's fantastic. And now, junior programs are everywhere. But in the 70s, that was kind of rare.
Yeah, we started ours in 72. And there were a couple of ours in the mutual aid, just like that.
That's good. That's real good.
Ours was back in the 70s in Little Falls. Was pretty big. I mean, you had to follow all the rules, of course. You couldn't do certain things, but just be able to put the helmet on, the turnout coat, and jump on the back of the truck and kick kinks out of the hose, I was ecstatic.
Yeah.
And then when they let me eventually, as I got a little older, put a breathing apparatus on, that's it. All bets are off after
The
that.
hook.
Yeah, I got the hook. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So a couple years in Little Falls, you got the hook, and then you said, "Hey, I want to do this."
Yes.
Yeah.
And I found a way.
Well, tell me the way. Tell me how it went down.
Oh, God. All right. So I would say 1976, I started as a volunteer in Little Falls. In 1978, I became an auxiliary firefighter in the city of Newark. I would ride with Ladder 3 on West Market in Hudson, for any of the Newark people listening. I would ride every Saturday and Sunday with a certain tour if they were working.
Right.
And loved it. Just fell in love with that type of atmosphere. 1981, I got hired in Jersey City as a career firefighter. 1984, I took a leave of absence from Jersey City, got hired in the city of New York.
Is that right?
Yes. I went to New York for a short period of time. Great departments, great people, huge organization.
Right.
But to be quite honest, I was only over there for a few months. I resigned and came back to Jersey City for a number of reasons. The contract was a little bit better on the Jersey side. So that made a difference. You're looking to start a family, so that monetary thing came into play. And in the 80s, Jersey City was literally being incinerated. And what I loved about Jersey City, and the Jersey City people who may be listening will know exactly what I'm talking about, it's a very diverse city.
Yeah.
I say diversity from its inventory of buildings. In Jersey City, you could go to a high-rise at 9 o'clock in the morning. You could be in the subway at 10. At 11 o'clock, you could be in a church, a row frame, a brownstone, on a container ship. We had everything within our footprint that you can experience over a course of years. So I thought, in addition to making a few more dollars, it probably would make me a better or well-versed fire officer someday.
Sure.
And I think it helped. I really did. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think the diversity of Jersey City. I mean, a lot of people listen to us from all over the country.
Right.
So, to understand what Jersey City is directly across the Hudson River,
Right across
from
from
Lower Manhattan.
Right.
Right. So you're staring at Statue of Liberty, World Trade.
Yep.
Right. So all of that. You have a beautiful Liberty State Park, which is right on the water.
Beautiful. Yes.
Gorgeous. And Jersey City's going through a resurgence too. I mean,
Big
when
time.
in the 80s, it was
not-
burnt.
It was a tough place to be.
Yeah, it was
But
a tough
If
town.
you wanted to be a firefighter, it was probably
It was
one of
the
the places.
It
to be.
was the
Yeah.
good place. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I believe that, and I also think too. And correct me if I'm wrong. Just understanding and knowing what I know, it's a small enough. It's big enough to have plenty of opportunity, but it's small enough that you're going to be able to get that opportunity.
Yes. I mean, the city has changed, as you mentioned, in different ways. I remember when I started in 1981, we had over 800 firefighters in the street. Now, we are not an EMS-based fire department. We would sister up with EMS, which is a private contractor. They probably had, at that time, roughly 200 EMS people. So
Okay.
800 firefighters, 200 EMS. Now, over that time, the city has went through a downgrade, I should say, and the fire department, of course, was pretty much chopped up. When I left 3 years ago, we were down to a little over 600 people.
Okay.
You ask my opinion, they should probably be around 900 because the city has grown significantly.
Yeah.
I mean, the population density, it's 300,000 people and about 14 square miles.
Right.
That's pretty significant.
That's insane.
Absolutely.
And high rises, we didn't have many when I started, and now they have a 200 plus, topping out at 80 stories. So
Yep.
the challenges are there. It's like a mini. Actually, the joke was they used to call us the sixth borough of New York. We had everything New York had, but on a smaller footprint. With a lot less firefighters, of course,
Yeah.
but at the same time.
Right.
But I enjoyed it, because I said each and every day you didn't know what was coming that day, whether it was something on a 40th floor or something that was 4 stories below grade in the subway. So it was different, unique, and it allowed us to get a big playbook.
Yeah.
Chief, what was your first assignment in Jersey City?
Out of the academy,
Yeah.
I was assigned to Engine 10, which is what used to be in the old 4th Battalion, now the 1st Battalion. It's in the Lafayette section of the city, a little bit more central, but southern at the same point.
Do you remember who like your senior guys were that took you in?
Oh yes, oh my God, yeah, absolutely. There was one guy. I haven't. You know, I'm glad you asked that question because I haven't talked about him for a while, and I probably might even get a little emotional. He was a great friend and a mentor. His name was Frankie Salerno, and I worked with Engine 10. We were assisted up at Ladder 12 in the same house. And what I would do is you would have to work a couple months in an engine as a probie, then a couple months in a ladder, to get well versed on both sides. And when I went to Ladder 12, which is right across the hall, I mean, on the apparatus floor, literally, this gentleman took me under his wing. He was kind of like a surrogate father. I mean, he taught me everything there would be to know about ladders, fire escapes, roofs, and we became very good friends. Actually, to further the story, he worked as a part-time roofer in the city. So he got me a part-time job on my days off with him as a roofer, a commercial roofer. So we would be putting roofs on commercial buildings on our days off, but we would be talking about if we have a fire here at this building, watch the parapet wall, or watch the gooseneck ladder.
Yep.
And ironically, we did have a few fires in some of the buildings that we put the roofs on. And it was just a great learning lesson. He passed away from cancer, from the job. And it was it knocked me back for a while. But I haven't talked about him in a while. I wrote a few articles about him over the years about the ladder company duties, and his name would be in my articles. So Frankie Salerno sticks out as a big, big picture for me.
How important was that in your career to have a senior man give you the time to tutor you to become who you are today?
Extremely important. It's a must, whether it was 40 years ago or whether it's today. You have to have people like that.
Yeah.
We were lucky enough back in the 70s and 80s and even into the 90s, we called them the war years. I'm sure everyone's talked about that you had enough work that you were learning pretty quickly, on a day-to-day basis. But still, even though you were getting work, you still needed someone to navigate the whys and why nots.
Sure.
So you didn't want to, I remember him saying to me on the top of a fire escape, getting access to the roof, he would say, take that gooseneck ladder and pull on it. And I'm like, and one time I pulled on it and it was not leg bolted in. And, and I shared that after Frankie had passed with other people. I said, you pull on that gooseneck, make sure it's in there. And it still happens today. For good reason, mentors are extremely valuable.
I agree.
What was the age difference when you came on versus your senior guy? Was it?
When I came on, there was a hiring freeze for a number of years.
Yeah.
In my class in '81, there were 75 of us in a probie school. And Frankie, the gentleman I just mentioned to you, I was just turned 21 when I got hired. I would say Frankie was probably 40, 42, 43, 44, 45.
Yeah.
And he was probably a firefighter at that time, a good 20 years.
Yeah.
I think that's the amazing thing that Jeremy talks about it a lot with friends and family about that, how we can kind of traverse that age gap pretty quickly in the fire service. But I think that even back in the 80s, knowing that there's a guy with 20 years on, sees you come through the door and takes you under the wing, is so important because, unfortunately, we're seeing that senior guy kind of slip away. And we talked about it a little bit before, but that's one of the other reasons why we came forward with this. But that's awesome that you had that opportunity.
It's so nice to hear. I mean, so many guys, I think back then, and I might be mistaken. I mean, I'm not, I don't have as many years in, but, it was typical to have guys retire as senior men that didn't take the promotional exams and didn't want to, frankly. Yeah. I have one of my best friends right now, New York City fireman. He doesn't want to be promoted. He wants to retire as a backstep senior man, and he's super proud of that. And he he walks that line, and I think that's so important. I think now we're finding, and we talk about this probably too much. I don't know, maybe not enough. But when your senior man has 8 years, the tutelage that he can give that new kid coming in is not going to be what that 20-year man was able to to instill into you.
Especially during that time. Too.
Right. Well, that's it too. Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, those are hot topics. I have to think that Frank Salerno really instilled into you the values of the Jersey City Fire Department, but not just the job, but also being a man.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that to me is the biggest part of so much of this is that, you know, it's you grow up in the firehouse. I got all these young kids in my firehouse, and I'm watching them grow up. And I'm watching them mature and start to correct their wrongs. And then they start maturing in the firehouse, and they move to a lieutenant position or an engineer position. And it's nice to see the maturity come through. And I think in the fire service, we need that, because the more mature we can make our people, the better the job will be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, when you talk about experience, and you mentioned a moment ago that we're losing the senior guy, you know, I talk about this sometimes in some seminars. I say it's important to get that guy back. What I mean by that, invite him for breakfast, invite him for lunch,
100%,
and let him tell a story or two, and just listen and take mental notes, take handwritten notes, and when you open that door for him and he starts to talk, you shut the TV off and let him talk about the fire in 1978 or 1989, whatever it may be.
Yep.
And I guarantee you're going to be picking up a lot of good points.
Yeah,
whatever.
We went to the West Point Fire Department, and they had a guy that was probably out, 7-10 years?
Oh, easily.
And he was always around the firehouse, and he always pulled the books out and showed them this and that. They were like, oh, that's why that building's like that.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
all that kind of stuff.
The passion. The passion will always be there.
Yeah.
And even what you were saying about taking it outside of the firehouse, like how he got you the job doing roof work, that's incredible. What a cool opportunity to blend two worlds of, like, not only are you trying to make a living out there, but he's teaching you things that still apply to the firehouse in a totally different setting.
He even took me to Atlantic City and showed me how to shoot craps. and I'm not making that up either.
Fantastic.
And yes, he was a big Atlantic City guy. He would say, "Come on, we're going down to resorts for the weekend," and I would go down. You know, at that time with my girlfriend, and we'd stay over. And he goes, "All right, what killed Jesse James? You know, 35 or 45, I should say." You know.
God, that's so good.
Yeah. So we
life
were very
lessons.
close. Yes. Yeah.
I love that, because, you know, those relationships then on the back step or on that front porch or up on that gooseneck ladder making your way to that roof, those relationships matter.
Yes. Absolutely.
That's when that is the epitome of when it matters most. The trust, the friendship, the laughter, the sadness, all of that is getting that job done and doing that job correctly.
And I think it's important, though, in addition to what you're saying, if you have an experience like that, like I did with Frankie, you take that and you pass that on. And you pass the passion.
You have an obligation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And hopefully somebody else will have a Frankie that maybe I introduced them to.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I do enjoy, and Rob likes to ask that question a lot of our guests, and I always like to hear the stories, because I will tell you that I think almost every guest that we've had a very influential senior man who allowed them to flourish underneath them.
Yep.
And that's awesome. So let's move on a little bit. So Engine 10 was your first assignment. Mm-hmm. You got the ability to go to roof frames, commercials, churches, high-rises, mid-rises. You've done it. You've been there.
It was a great house. It
Yeah.
was right on the border of 3 battalions. We were right on the border of the 4th, the 1st, and the 2nd.
It's a good spot.
And we'd be on the first alarm assignment to all 3 battalions, and each battalion was a little bit different than the other based on their building inventory. So downtown was more brownstone, some high-rise, and subway. In the Lafayette section where the house was, we had a lot of row frame, a lot of row brick, some housing projects. When you went to the 2nd battalion out in Greenville, a lot of big frames, some maybe Queen Anne Victorian. Yep. But it was a great mix. And each battalion at that time was, for lack of a better word, was burning. So you were going someplace that day.
Yep.
There's no doubt about it.
What kind of truck was it?
It was a 73 Max CF. Nice. Canary yellow.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
70s.
Yeah. If you look us up, everything back when I came on was yellow. Taxi cab yellow. They called them the yellow birds. That's what the buffs called them. You couldn't miss the truck coming down the street because it was yellow. That lasted for about maybe 10 years, and then they went.
Did you like
back
that? How do you feel about the yellow?
Honestly, it didn't bother me. The only thing that bothered me when I got to Engine 10 is it didn't have a Federal Q siren. It had an electronic siren. So, of course, talking to my buddies, We got one from a salvage fire truck.
Acquired one.
Yes,
Right.
yeah,
Absolutely.
we could say that. And we made good friends with guys at the fire department shops, and they mounted it for us. And that took off.
On a side note, Chief, let's talk about how important the shops are real quick.
Oh, big time, big time.
So through everything that we've done with National Fire Radio, I'm an apparatus guy. So my favorite time is when I get to meet the guys in the shops. And I've been to a lot of cities and into the shops, and you meet these shop guys. They are probably some of the most important people on the line that the companies need to take care of and recognize, because they'll do you those solids and they'll do you those favors and they'll get you back in service and they'll get your rig back on the line. But I love the shops.
And I tell you, we had a couple of great people, and we went to the extent that we would invite them to all the retirement parties, the family picnics.
Were they civilian?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
We made sure we got new shirts at 10 and 12.
Yep.
They got new shirts from 10 and 12.
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
So, you go down to shops, and they're all engine 10, ladder 12, so they were one of us.
Yep.
And it was easy to get things done also that way.
Yeah.
You know?
Good. So engine 10, right? The Yellowbirds, man. I mean,
Yeah.
Cruising down with your electric. Now you got a Q on the front. Your career starts to speed up. I got to think it's snowballing. You had ambition and desire to go. Give me your next step. Where'd we go? How to play out?
Well, there was no doubt that, I wanted to be a boss someday.
Sure.
But I also realized that I had to make sure before I took that oath of office, I knew what the hell I was talking about.
I like that.
So it took a while. And I was probably a firefighter, I bet you 10 to 12 years before I got promoted as a company officer. So during that time, I was able to go to a lot of incidents and hang on the coattails of a lot of the senior members, one that we talked about a moment ago, ask them questions like, why did we do this? Why did that work? Why did that work? So kind of building a, for lack of a better word, a mental notebook. But I also knew in order to get promoted someday, I had to, bolster my academics. It was one thing to have the street smarts to a certain degree, but the academics. So that was kind of like the beginning of, writing some things.
Sure.
I started putting notes together, and this is very true. I would have a notebook on private dwellings, handwritten, on if we went to one, what went well, what didn't go well. Because there was not a lot. There was no internet back then. The books were limited. It was mostly IFSTA books. There was really no... there was a few good hardcover books out there, but nowhere near that you have now. So I would kind of, have a book on private dwellings. Then I had a book on multiple dwellings. Then I had a book on churches. Then I had a book on taxpayers.
Did you do this on your own, or was this something? Because I know some guys are taught to carry a journal with them. Was that something in the Jersey City culture? Hey, new guys, you should have a journal and
Not to that extent.
Okay.
Maybe a journal on, writing down some experiences,
Sure.
maybe like, having like that type of story. I wanted to write things down from being able to understand what happened and be able to make a decision someday about
like that.
what happened,
Yep.
or what went right, what didn't go wrong. So that was pretty much the start of, trying to get prepared for the exams and, having a series of notebooks on every occupancy we had in the city that I would be able to frequent. High rise, didn't have a big book on high rise. We didn't have a lot of high rises back then. Subway, I had a little book. Even though we had a subway, we didn't frequent the subway. But
Right.
if you wanted a book on row frames, tenements, I had a book, And I constantly updated my notes, scribbling things based on something new that we found out, something that didn't go well. And I still have them, honestly.
I hope you do, and I'd love to.
Can't read my handwriting, but
I don't
have
care.
it.
Listen, you see what I'm doing here. This to me, this book right here, was something that I never would have. If you told me 3 years ago I was going to keep a journal, I would have told you you're out of your mind.
Yeah.
I'm 43 years old, been a fireman for 25 years. I've never kept a journal in my life, and I'm 100 miles an hour 100% of the time. So my brain's constantly going. But what I find is when I started National Fire Radio, was so many things were popping through my head, ideas, things we wanted to do, things I thought of, creativity, people I wanted to talk to, interview, all these things. And then I started realizing that I started forgetting a lot of what I thought were great ideas. And then I'm like, wait, I thought about this the other day and I couldn't place it. And for me, that became troubling because I want to be able to remember what I've done. And so for me now, I keep this journal and I have this side and then I also write on it this side. Depending on what I'm doing, it's a flip-flop journal. And it is so cool to go back and flip through my pages from a year ago now and see like what we've done, what we've talked about, who we talked to. A lot of fun. I cannot recommend that enough to the listeners, and we have a lot of young listeners that if you don't keep a journal, keep one.
Yeah.
I even keep one on my phone, and it's great. Like a
That's
different
awesome.
note for firefighting, a different note for school, a different note for even like social life, so I don't forget what one friend said and mix it with another.
I just think there's so many things that go down in the firehouse, and there's and Heather, in life too, of course. If I kept my life journal, this thing would be like a phone book.
Jay's
But
diary.
I'm telling you, it'd be out of control. But in
diary
the
of Jay.
firehouse, so many things happen, and so many ridiculous scenarios, conversations, and then the learning aspects. Forcing doors, this roof didn't go as well, we threw a ladder on this building, this fire escape, this. I mean, you could just go on and on
sure.
with the notes, and it just helps you place your experiences. And I'm hoping another 25 years later from now, I'll be able to thumb back. But
it's
I
invaluable.
hope you thumb through them every once in a while.
I do, and like even and every time I would add stuff into the book, whatever the occupancy was, if we had a fire, I would write down the address.
Yep. I love
date,
that.
the time, and anything that influences, whether it was the weather. And I could tell you a quick story. I go back to my friend Frankie Salerno. We were doing roofing on the side. And in the Greenville section of Jersey City, we put a roof on a department store. It was called the Galaxy Toy Store. I actually mentioned it in the book. And the area was a tough area, and the owner wanted us to put, I'm sure you heard, steel plating on the roof, and then cover it with an actual, the regular paper and the asphalt and everything that went with that to prevent people, because what they were doing is they would cut the roof after hours, jump down like Santa Claus, and throw all the toys up, and they would go out throughout the neighborhood. And I guess after he lost his inventory a few times, he called the commercial roofers. I just happened to work for a company, and we put steel plating on the roof. Lo and behold, and I'm not making this up, one New Year's Eve at 8:30 in the morning, a box comes in for that address. Now, I think we were the fourth due engine, working fire. I'm the pump chauffeur at engine 10, about a block away. So I get the line set up. I'm feeding a couple of big lines in. This thing is going good.
Yeah.
So I scramble down to the front of the building, and I say to the battalion chief, now I'm a new kid. I'm only on the job like 2 years. I said, Chief, all due respect, he looks at me. He goes, like what?
Yeah.
I said, there's still plating on the roof. The guys are not going to be able to cut the roof. He kind of snickered at me, and
Thanks, kid.
Yeah, I'm done. And you could hear the saws hit it. You could, to the point I didn't see because I was down obviously on ground level. But Frankie was up there on the roof. He goes, "We're never going to open this roof." The blades it was sparks.
Sure.
The roof never got opened. The building burnt to the ground. But again, I remember the Galaxy Toy Store like it was yesterday, and the fact that it had that roof. We did it as roofers, and lo and behold, we had a fire there. I never forgot it, and I mentioned it in the book.
Yeah. Awesome. And I love that. Yes.
I was going to say, is there, with the exception of that, is there anything that you've just recently flipped through the book and you're just like, that was a good one?
Yeah. Oh my God, I could tell you a million stories. Yeah, quite a few. Near misses.
Yeah.
Sure.
That I've spun into stories at seminars. And
Did you do you have one fire that was influential to you? I know you talk a lot about the high rise that was under construction, but even before that fire, because you were in a command position for that fire,
right?
But just as a backstep fireman coming up through the ranks, was there one or two jobs that really put the job into perspective for you in a way that little piece of humble pie or something that you were like, man, this job just kicked our ass and it shouldn't have, or something along those lines?
Well, back in my day, if I could say that, we didn't wear breathing apparatus.
Right.
The first due engine would crawl on their belly and push that line as far as they could, and the second due engine would mask up and take the line over. After a few times of us doing that and having to give up the line to the second engine, I said that this ain't happening again.
Yeah.
So I remember as a young buck, indirectly, I guess, or directly, whatever word you want to spin, I started influencing others to wear breathing apparatus. And we would take it out of the cabinet on the side. Right. Some of them were in black boxes. Yeah. And every morning at 8 o'clock, I would take it was a big monster Scott, put it against the seat. It had no Zymatic clips back then. And when I got in, I just leaned against it, and they were banging on the window. We got a fire. I'd get dressed. When I would leave at 6 o'clock, some of the other members from the other shifts, senior, go, put that back in the cabinet. I'm like, well, this is going to help you get. I don't put it back in the cabinet. All right. And I kept doing it, not because I wanted to upset anybody. I just kept doing it because at 6 o'clock, you're running out the door, you have to go someplace. And after a period of months, the other guys would leave it there, like because maybe they were mad. But they were starting to get the jump, getting the line down the hallway, making the turn, and not having a second due engine take their line. So that was something that was a good thing.
Yeah.
Now, you asked a question about bad things. There have been quite a few. And one that comes to mind, I was a little bit higher in rank. I remember just getting promoted as a battalion chief. And there's a video of this someplace. I know there is. I came in as the second due chief. We call them like the working fire chief or like the all-hands chief.
Right. Uh-huh.
And it was a fire in a large brace frame, like an older frame. I knew it was braced because it was just a very old building. You got braced, you got balloon, you got platform, you got lightweight frame. And it was a vacant building, all right, so that's an issue. But the fire was in different locations on different floors. And they were digging in. Of course, they're always going to dig in until you tell them not to dig in.
That's right.
And the battalion chief that was running the fire, I said to him, good friend, I go, Paulie, I said, I think we got to get him out. He looked at me, he goes, and I said, we got to get him out. You got fire on too many floors in different locations. And by the grace of God, he agreed with me. We pulled everybody out, and the building disappeared. Now, people would say to me after the fire, what influenced you? I'll tell you what influenced me. Vinnie Dunn's books.
Yeah.
Now, Vinnie Dunn is a great friend. He's a mentor. And I've read everything that gentleman has put out, and he's still putting out great material.
Incredible. Yeah.
And when he talked about brace frame, mortise and tenon joint connections, post, girt, everything that goes with that, and how they collapse without warning, they just violently disappear, especially on lower floor fires, structure fires. And I'm looking at this thing, and I was like, Vinnie Dunn was on my shoulder, like, Mike.
Yep.
And I just said, all right, I go, they're going to be mad, because they all come out and go, what do they
Chief,
always say?
We're making progress,
Just give me
Chief.
5 more minutes.
Right.
Just give me 5 more
Absolutely.
minutes. And they looked at me going, not today. And I'm not kidding you when I say this. I couldn't put a timeline on it. It was less than 10 minutes. The building disappeared.
Wow.
And the looks on everyone's faces, including my own,
Yeah.
like an oh my God type moment. And we probably had about 20-some people digging in on 3 floors in multiple locations. And they were getting it, but it was just in bad spots.
So, what influenced you to become a student of the craft? That's the thing, because there's so many people in the fire service these days that aren't a student, right? They don't sit back and they don't read Vinnie Dunn's books, and they don't appreciate building construction. And I mean, I have your FireGround Size-Up edition 2 right here, right? And we're going to talk about this in a little bit. But there's a lot of influences that went into the first edition, let alone the second edition, right? So, like, where's that inspiration? Like, and then at that fire, I mean, Vinnie Dunn was, you got the good angel, the bad angel, the devil, and if he's there whispering in your ear, it's because you in your career decided that you needed to know that craft.
Yeah.
Can you pinpoint? I mean, were you always a good student? Were you a learner? Were you,
No.
Okay.
I wasn't a good student. I was a borderline high school. I graduated, of course. I went to college, and when I went to college, I knew I wanted to be a firefighter, and I wasn't a career firefighter at that time yet. I started college I'm going to give you my age now. I started school in 1978, college.
Right.
And I went to Jersey City State, which is now New Jersey City University.
Yeah.
I wanted to get my bachelor's in fire science. I knew I wanted to be a firefighter. And in the class was firemen from Jersey City, Newark, Patterson, New York City. And they would let me just get into conversation. And I just sit there and listen with a cup of coffee or what, and I go, and they would tell stories, kind of like what we're doing now. And I would just, like, my head would tilt and I go, can I ask you a question? And, and I would just listen and learn. And from that, I got the passion, the motivation. I go, well, how can I be like that guy?
Yep.
Like, he's a lieutenant. He's a battalion chief. And as they would tell stories, I would just listen and listen and listen. And when I was lucky enough to get hired in Jersey City, I did the same thing. Because you always found out after a couple good flyers who were the key people.
Of course.
And I would make sure, I'm going to try to transfer to that company. Or I'm going to make sure when I have a retirement day, I'm going to sit with, Captain Louis Simone and grab his, hey, Lou, I remember that fire you had in the projects. Tell me about how you stretched, because it looked like a real tough stretch. And it just inspired me and motivated me. And, I listened. I just simply listened.
No, I find that super interesting because it sounds like you said that your class had firefighters from all different area. Were you listening to people just like talking outside of class, or was that more like the professors giving you a lecture? I feel like that's a really interesting dynamic.
Heather, it was
having.
both. It was
Right.
both. We had some great instructors at the college, but the guys would exchange stories with the instructor, and then you would take your break or you would go to lunch in between classes.
You're never not
And,
learning.
and you're always talking shop, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, wherever you are. I mean, whether there's it's a classroom or a cafeteria, and it was kind of like they turned when they stopped, I banged into them. You know, I always wanted to learn more.
I love that.
And it just fueled me. It really did, and it actually continues to this day. It really does.
I think it's so important though to say though. I think when you find something that you're super passionate about and you fall in love with, I think you take that with you in every part of your life.
Absolutely.
And I'm not a big student. You know, I mean, I have my bachelor's degree. I went to college, and you know, I was just your average, student. Like I didn't try hard. Can't say my daughter's here. I shouldn't be saying that right now, but she knows. I don't have to, sugarcoat it. But but in the fire service. But I even think today, I don't know enough about it. I should know more, and I should make more of an effort to read more of Vinny Dunn's books, or even that guy Michael Terpak. Read more of his. But you know what I'm saying? Because these are firefighters that are tried and true in their methodology, and they have stories to share. This to me, Chief, is a storybook with lessons to be told. Yes. Right? I mean, there is. I mean, I've gone through it. I can't tell you I've read it cover to cover, but from the illustrations to the bullet points to the stories behind it, it's storytelling.
Yes.
And if you're not the best student, you can still take a book like this and learn from it, because it's something about the passion of the craft. And when you have the ability to digest that, it hits you.
Yes.
And just like it hit you when you sat in class with all those guys that influenced you, you didn't even know you were being influenced, and they didn't know they were influencing you. But I'm sure that had such an incredible impact for you to do a hardcover.
Yeah. And you can't replace that. You
It's
really
awesome.
can't. But I'll tell you quite honestly, and I'm sure everybody at the table would agree with me, the opportunity today to get information or intel, I always say intel, is huge. I mean, through social media. I mean, even though I'm not in front of a building anymore, and as we talked, I do miss that, I'm still able to get out and speak and talk about things. I am still researching things.
Absolutely.
I'm still going to classes. I'm still asking questions.
How important is it now to vet the information now more than ever?
It's very important.
Right? Everything's at your fingertips right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
How true is
Too
everything
much
that you're reading?
information.
Yeah, you got to be able to weed through it and pick something that's that's close or near or in your backyard. That's something you're going to frequent. I tell people, if you don't have a subway, obviously you're not going to read about a subway. If you don't have a significant high rise, you're not going to read about a high rise. But if you got garden apartments with light wood frame construction, which everybody does,
Yeah.
all right, townhouses, or even if you have something that is what I call a low frequency, high impact, like a church. No one talks about churches. It's like we don't get church fires every day, thank God. But it's a low frequency, but when it happens big.
You ever see a small church fire?
Yeah, no, you never do.
Never.
So, I mean, it's kind of like look out your window, what do you have, and start to pick them apart. And how about this? Start a notebook,
I love that.
Yeah.
I love
So
that.
can I ask about the publishing process, like going from your notebook to a published book? What does that all entail?
Well, it was a process. I mean, it started with, I remember I wrote an article, and I sent it to, oh, God, I'm thinking, and I'm going to probably not, I don't know if it was Fire Rescue. I'm going back.
Sure.
And I sent it in with some pictures, and they called me, and I was like, I thought it was a joke. I thought it was one of the guys. Yeah, I thought it was one of the guys.
I knew that was coming.
And they go, no, this is so-and-so from Better Magazine. We want to
sure
publish an
it is.
article.
Yeah.
And I was like euphoric, and I go, okay, maybe I could do this again. So I wrote quite a few articles before I even entertained doing a book.
Sure.
Because a book to me was a monster project. But once I had
It's
the
also
nerve,
a career project.
Yeah,
Were you an
yes.
officer at that time? Like, what level of experience did you
I
have?
think I was a captain when I wrote the first Size-Up book. The first Size-Up book was written in 2002. That's how long ago that was. And it took me all this time because I chose to, 17 years before I came out with the second edition. I didn't want to come out with another edition until I felt I was ready, one,
Yeah.
and there was enough of a change of material for me to get it out there. And I don't say any ill about any other authors. I respect each and every one of them, but it seems like editions in some books are coming out every 2 years, and I'm just wondering why that happens. Yeah, I'm sure it's money driven. I wasn't, you know, I'm not, I don't, you don't make a lot of money doing this. I'll tell you right now. If this was Harry Potter, okay, I'd be making some good money. But when you write a textbook, you make a couple dollars, but it's more about the passion, the motivation, and if somebody likes something you wrote, that to me, that's worth millions. It really is.
But that right there is the one thing that we should hit on too, is that you're identifying that like, hey, this isn't Harry Potter, and you're making a couple bucks, but it's not like anybody thinks that this is about a passion, because there's so many people that are now in this digital age with social media and everything else. They're trying to make that quick buck, and that's like it's frustrating because you have to sort through whether this is valid information or not. But then you have to and there's like that whole vetting process, because we're not like, this isn't the industry to go make. You want to make a quick buck, go listen to Gary Vee and turn baseball cards around at a yard sale or something like that, but not here in the fire service.
Well, you're right. Like as you mentioned, that is the problem with social media. There's an abundance of information, and you have to vet it all.
You sure do.
But you know, it's not. Maybe that's not a bad thing.
No, because you know you do have to be on the channels where people are listening.
Yes.
And if you're going to influence the next generation, you got to be on their level and in their playing field. And if you choose not to be, you're going to get passed up. And you could have the best lesson to tell and the best stories to share, but if nobody's going to listen to it, who cares what your stories are?
Yeah, that's true.
You know,
Very true.
I will say this: I made two marks here. You know, we're talking about FireGround Size-Up, put out by Fire Engineering, authored by yourself. This is the second edition that's out right now. Cool picture with you on a handy talkie on the back with your bio.
I remember that fire too. That was
Do
a good
you?
fire. Oh, sure.
What was that fire?
It was a top floor of an H-type, 6-story H-type. I have fire out like 4 windows, and it was in the cockloft, and you know the H-types how they're set up.
Was it a top floor fire?
Yeah, top floor.
Always.
Yeah, it was
Every
always,
single H type.
They're
is
never
a
on the
top
first. They're never
That's
on the
right.
first floor. They're never
It's
on the
always
first
a top floor fire in an H, and they're always running the cockloft.
Yeah.
It's just how it always plays out. What's the matter?
I just wanted you to hold the picture up.
The one in the back.
Oh, one in the back.
Yeah.
I was a lot younger there.
Yeah. So, but I will tell you that I have 2 notes jotted down here. One, it's a life's work. You know, I think, you know, I'm super super jealous and proud, all in the same package, that you have something like this, because this is it's a testimonial to your career and your experiences. And I think that what we hit on before with the journal, it's the beginning stages of putting together your career. I mean, how many people can say that they have their career's work wrapped up under a cover that they can talk about and go around and share these stories and then elaborate on those stories? Yeah. And I think that's fantastic, Chief. And I thank you. I mean, I know it's a project and it's a passion, but I thank you for that, because this has influenced. I couldn't even fathom how many people this has influenced in their career. And I just think it's what the fire service is all about, right? It's paying it forward. You pay homage to what you've learned, and to Frankie Salerno, who came before you, who helped you craft who you are. This is the end product of that. Yeah.
Also,
it's so cool.
Thank you.
You know, for everybody that's out there that's either listening or who's in our live feed at the moment, like all of the ones who reach out to us and tell us about how they're fighting counterculture in their fire service and being told to sit back and like, don't worry about it, kid. Like this book in particular is one that, like, if you're looking for something to do, because the guys around you maybe not be motivated, this is the book to pick up and start cracking open, because this will help start building that base for you, and until you can get a situation where you have others that are going to help you build that base with you.
When this is a print book, and you're going to have to buy this and get it. But I think what I'd like to offer this out there right now, and I thought one of the coolest things that ever happened to me was I had a senior guy pass down a book to me. And I think with something like this, if you have the want and desire to learn and better yourself, you have an obligation to, one, get something like this in your library and read it. Doesn't have to be cover to cover, but when something pops up, you can always flip to that chapter, look it up, right? Familiarize yourself. But then what you want to do too is you're going to want to take this book and you're going to want to put your name and date in it, and then you're going to take this book and you're going to hand it to somebody that you respect in your firehouse that's a few years behind you, and you pass that forward. What a cool lineage.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I love that.
Yep.
So,
And what's important to mention, too, to your point earlier, and I thank you for complimenting the book. And even though my name is on the book, there's a lot of other people's names.
Without a
That if
doubt.
I put them in the book, it would take up more pages than the content. And I mean, officers and firefighters I work with over the years have influenced me. And a lot of people don't mention these people. The fire photographers, I mean,
Yep.
the buffs, these people, I mean, they're invaluable. The pictures, and they would catch something, and I would get this picture, and it would be able help me to add to my notebook personally, and then maybe write a chapter.
That's a very good point.
Or tell a story. So the fire photographers out there, you people are second to none. I mean, and thank God you're there. To capture the moment.
People that love the job, and they love to capture that. And through capturing that, now more than ever, we can use that as a reference to only better ourselves.
Absolutely.
So it's cool. All right, so let's do this. Engine 10, the Yellowbirds. Start wanting to promote through the ranks. We start climbing up. I mean, you ended up as a deputy chief of a very busy city in New Jersey. The largest city in New Jersey,
Just shy of Newark.
Okay,
I
so
think Newark beats us a little
Okay.
bit. Yes.
But I mean, I have to think that what a storied career, and with that comes a lot of great success stories and some turbulence as well. Of course, you talked about you missed the firehouse, you missed the street, you don't miss town hall so much.
No.
I get all that, right? Absolutely. Crowning achievements or memorable moments. Being a deputy chief of such a large department, I have to think that. Every day you went in and you had that bell cap. The one thing I can say is bell caps are prevalent in Jersey City, correct?
Yes.
Which
Very
I
much
think
so.
is fantastic.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't happen everywhere.
A lot of pride. Yes.
And I love that. So that speaks to the culture. And so when you get in your buggy or your chief's vehicle or command vehicle, whatever you term it, there's a tremendous sense of pride.
Very much. Every day.
So speak to that a little bit if you wouldn't mind. I mean, Jersey City seems like a town of culture, department of culture where you grew up through the ranks and you had that culture and that influence. You talked about the different battalions and how the different battalions had a little bit different of how they operated and who they were and so on. But that's all culture and tradition and pride driven. Right. Talk about that in a deputy chief's position where you're the tour commander for the day. You want to talk about pride.
Well, I mean, I was proud to say I was a firefighter from Jersey City. I mean, it still is. It's a great city. It's a great department. And as good as I know that we were and still continue to be, and that pride every morning with the bell cap on, and when you get out of the car and you walk to the front of the building, and you could see the enthusiasm, the motivation. My toughest challenge was trying to corral them, because they all want to go in the front door, which, I worked on that. But even with that being said, we also had deficiencies. We had things that weren't being addressed. And we talked a little bit before we went on air, a little bit about some high-rise.
Yeah, let's get into that.
And I'll just bring this up because it's kind of a great lead-in. I think we can go toe-to-toe with any department. I would say New York, Chicago, Boston, anybody toe-to-toe based on our staffing. And anybody in row frames, brownstones, tenements, churches, we were well versed there because that was our meat and potato, bread and butter.
Yep.
But we didn't have a good plan for high rise because we didn't have that in our backyard. I mean, we had high rises, but they were mostly limited to high rise housing projects. And they're class 1 fire resistant brick, concrete, and steel. Usually doesn't get out of the apartment of origin, maybe auto out the window a little bit, but when Jersey City started to become discovered because of our proximity to New York, they leveled the entire waterfront, right, and they started to go up. And they were going up so fast, and every morning, even though I had my bell cap on, I would see another crane in the sky. And I would go to our playbook on high-rise. It was dated. It was more for the housing project.
Sure.
And we started to get a couple fires in these things, and, some big buildings. Some high ceilings, some unique issues with elevator usage. And lo and behold, one incident, and I do talk about it. I actually dedicated an entire chapter in the book to it because I thought it was that influential.
Yep.
We had a fire in a high-rise under construction. And I happened to be, of course, working there, and I was the boss. And we had no SOP for that. I didn't have a notebook like I had for private dwellings, I had nothing. And I don't want to say I was winging it, but there was a lot of times I was kind of like, all right, let me throw this at it, see what happens. Let me try this. And everything I threw at it didn't work. And we were losing the floor. And because I was the boss, and I took this very seriously, I actually get a little emotional when I talk about this. I had people up there.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it was a cast in place. It was a formwork fire on the 17th floor. And I did not know if they poured the floor that day. And this thing took off like a wildland fire. I mean, it was just dried out timber. It was on the 17th floor. The wind took it, and I couldn't get them down fast enough, to the point where, and this is, as I say true, this is also very true, I had to get them to a certain floor to dig in, to hunker down, because it was dropping around them, just to get water above them to slow it down, to buy them time, because there was no elevator. It was a concrete stair to maybe the 12th floor and wooden makeshift ladders between 12 and 17.
Building under construction.
It was a horror. It was a nightmare. And I'll tell you, in 44 years, it was probably the worst night of my life.
Yeah.
Like people talk about, Queen Anne's or tenements. Yeah, difficult fires, people jumping out windows.
Survivable.
But we kind of were used to that a little bit. This
get it.
I was not used to.
Right.
After that fire, it took me about a year, talking to myself quite a bit, I got to figure this out. We got to get a better playbook. And I looked, there wasn't a lot of stuff out there. And even though there was social media was up and ramped up at that time, not a lot of good material, in my opinion, on buildings under construction of height. There was a lot of great high-rise stuff, but they were buildings that were finished. They had certificate of occupancy. They had a sprinkler system. They had a detection system. They had more in play regarding protection.
Working fire pumps.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we kind of wrote our own. And it took about a year. We wrote it, and we vetted it amongst the big brass. I remember the chief of the department at the time, Chief Mike O'Reilly, great friend. I just talked to him the other day. I go, what do you think? He goes, we got to get this out. And we developed a procedure for this. We reinvented fire prevention inspection procedures for this.
That's got to be part
Yeah.
of it.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was huge.
Yep.
And then I started to look at our high-rises that were finished. I go, we don't have a good playbook on that. And of course, because I had a passion for this, I wrote some on this. The chief of the department at the time said to me, you know what? In addition to your duties as a tour commander, you're going to be the new first and only high-rise coordinator for Jersey City. I go, is there any additional money with
Yeah,
that?
do I get anything for that? No more sleepless nights.
He said, no.
Yeah.
But the short of the long is, Jeremy, it was a project that lasted about 2 more years, and it was probably the biggest project I was ever involved with. And it turned out to be a good manual that is still used today by the guys and gals in Jersey City, and they're continuing to add and make it better. Very influential incident that turned into a big part of my career.
Yeah, and I have to think though that's the piece of that puzzle, right? Is that you lived that you said that was the longest night of your career, probably.
Horrible night.
So that pushed you to better the standard, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, that raises the bar when you have some of those nights or a night like that where, by the grace of God, I mean, I think of when you start talking about high rises under construction, I think of the Deutsche Bank building in New York City.
But my fire was a few months after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and by the grace of God in New York City, they didn't lose 15 guys. I mean, they had companies, by the grace of God, getting out of there, and they still lost.
I believe they lost 2 guys.
Yes, 2 guys at that fire. And so, it's prevalent. And with the boom of construction in our area, I mean, it's just, the skyline's changing every single day.
We're all from Jersey. Anybody who's not from Jersey has to know Jersey cannot go out anymore.
Correct.
It's going up.
We're going up.
Well, and I was just going to say that's the one thing that for the viewers and the listeners out there is that we're not talking that all of a sudden you had a high rise or, another one. It was like when you say the waterfront disappeared and then everything popped up and like every morning you put that bell cap on and there was another crane in the sky. I mean, it's really hard to put into words how within a year the skyline literally changed.
I have pictures when I do some high-rise seminars, because I do a couple. I have pictures taken from the Manhattan side in the late 70s and 80s, looking across Jersey City, and it was a blighted waterfront, abandoned factories, warehouses, railroad terminals. There was nothing over 4 stories. It was all old, heavy timber. Then I would take that picture, and then I would bring a picture up into the 90s, and they couldn't believe it was the same city. from the same view from Manhattan looking across New Jersey.
And then go into the 2000s, right? So, little craziness too is if when you're out of this area, you're kind of disconnected a little bit. But after 9/11, so much downtown Manhattan moved across the river to Jersey City.
Sure.
It was less of a target hazard exposure, if you will, right? With not being New York City. So that spurred even more economic growth and hype.
It was also prior to 9/11. It was cheaper to rent space. Too.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Far.
absolutely.
And I think one of the other things that I think of is I know in just my experiences down in PG County and Hyattsville, they started building high rises pretty quick. So this is not just an issue that can happen in Jersey City. There's any place in the country can experience a sudden influx in real estate and for whatever reason start building up pretty quickly.
And again, it's like the church I mentioned earlier. It's kind of like one of those low frequency, high impact events.
Yeah.
You're not going to get one every day, but when you get one, you're going to remember it. Right? You just hope that you get out of it without bumps, bangs, and bruises.
How many more residents did you gain over that period of time?
Oh, that's a great question. Tens of thousands. I couldn't give you an exact number. I mean, I don't know the population during the heyday. It was probably close to 400,000 at one point, way back when. It went down very low to the low 200s. And I think now with the next census, it's going to be 300,000 plus. Again, that's what you know about, of course.
Now, did you gain, or you said you lost firehouses?
Oh, firehouse. I'm talking about population.
No, I did.
Okay.
But during that time, so now you have a larger population.
Yes.
But your fire department's getting smaller.
Correct.
Yeah. We had about 30 companies, fire companies, when I came in the door. 30, 31, if I can remember correctly. We went down as low as 24, I believe, at one point. And they would play a game when they talked about not being happy with the administrators, shirts and ties. Again, me being a tour commander, I would have to brown out up to 5 companies a day.
It's crazy.
Before they let me hire overtime.
Right.
And I was, of course, I voiced my opinion every day. I documented everything every day, and that didn't make people happy. But, at the end of the day, I was responsible for the chore.
Sure.
But I think now things have gotten much better. I think they're opening up as many as 26 companies a day. It's maybe 27, I believe. But it's still shy from the 30, 31, which doesn't seem like a big difference, but in a city of that size, that's a big difference.
Do you have advice for the officers that are out there? Because you were the tour commander of the city, but even for myself, there's been times where I've been told to do things that I'm like, man, I don't agree with this, and I've objected to it, and you have to do it. But like for yourself, like what were the things that got you through? Because like to me, like rounding out a company is not good, but there's a point where the rubber has to meet the road in the position. How do you, as an officer, get through that? Like, is there any tips or tricks for anybody that's out there that's going to have to contend with this in some form?
I don't think you ever get through it, to be quite honest with you, because it weighs on you. Because if that company's closed, and this happened to me numerous times. I can remember going to fires where the first new engine was closed. The first new ladder pulls up, and they got a fire in a 2-story frame going both ways down the block, and they got 2 water cans. People are jumping out windows. That happened many times. Or the engine would pull up, the truck is off duty, and they got somebody hanging out a 4th floor window, and the biggest ladder on the engine is a 24-foot extension. So, that I would never sit well with me. The only thing I would say or recommend that kind of gave me a little peace of mind is I was big on documentation. I was big on writing reports on this is an unsafe day, unsafe practices. And would that piss people off of shirt and tie caliber? Absolutely. Did I care? Absolutely not. Not because I wanted to cover my ass. I just wanted them to know that, listen, I'm challenged with the day that you gave me, and we're not ready for it. We don't have the full battle artillery ready to go. And we did our best. And it was tough because if the engine pulled up, they didn't have the truck, or the truck pulled up, they didn't have the engine. You think you're going to corral it? They're going to slow. They're still digging in. Sure. And I just had to continue to remind the troops, as great as they are, if you don't have somebody coming up your back with a second line, or if you don't have a ladder, then you just got to be mindful of this. As great as you are, and I love each and every one of you, you got to remember the bigger picture here. We're going to save the building to the best of the building. Don't forget you got a wife and 2 little ones back home. And that would resonate a little bit in the after action.
Yeah.
talked about a lot. I mean, we've been going. Is already
No, I'm having a blast.
Chief, already an hour in.
Oh, I'm
be
good.
honest.
I'm good.
But here's where I want to go with this. You 44 years.
Yes.
And in your 44 years, it's just an outstanding career. A lot of tons of ups, maybe a few downs, right? But at the end of the day, everything molds and crafts you to who you've become. Retired as a deputy chief of Jersey City. Outside of that was 3 years ago. I'm sure you have a lot of side projects going on too. I mean, your love for the fire service is certainly evident in everything that you do. So let's talk about a few things. Retirement, 3 years out. You missed the job. You missed the city. You talked about that before. But what are you doing now that's still keeping you in the game? Talk to me about it.
Well, thank God I'm able to do what I do, because I think I would have had a extremely difficult time psychologically retiring.
Happens.
Yeah, very
lot,
much so.
yeah.
And I had to be ready for it. And when I made the decision, I knew I wasn't going to be able to keep the passion alive. So I'm still able to teach. I do work with a company called Promotional Prep.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot of preparation in New Jersey, but we have a student base that goes as far out, if you can imagine this, as far as Honolulu.
Okay.
To help people get promoted for promotional exams. I teach college. I teach a program at the Sussex County Community College up by me in North Jersey. I teach part of their associate's degree. So that keeps me involved with the younger people, which is nice to see. I do some teaching for a company out of Chicago, a great area called Carterson Public Safety. I did a couple webinars with him. I do some articles. I'm on the team of County Fire Tactics. I don't know if you heard these guys.
Yep, of course.
Kurt out of Pensacola.
Of course.
I mean, he does 5 conferences a year, and I think I've been invited to 3 of them.
They are the top shelf
Their
conferences.
high-rise conference is unbelievable.
Yep, Pensacola.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And most recently, and I wanted to mention this because I think it's worth mentioning, because I always prided myself on being a 2 + 2 = 4 type guy. I just started doing some consulting and advisory work for a company out of Buffalo called 3 AM Innovations. And I'll just tell you a quick story about these guys. These guys, it's a startup company, some high-tech people, but with some fire officers on board as advisors and consultants. And I'm going to tell you quite honestly, I'm sure you're going to hear of them soon, and maybe you want to talk to them. They're going to change the fire service as it relates to the high-tech management and accountability systems. They're doing things now within their IP on GPS. So I know GPS is out there, but inertial type stuff, the multi-radio frequency capability of being able to put a wearer device on a firefighter and track his every move. I'm talking left to right, in a building, vertically in a high-rise, below grade in the subway. In addition to that, they have a feature within the system's actually called, if you can imagine, it's called the Florian System.
Florian, I love that.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
They have a feature within the system and the wearable that they could track your biometrics. So based on a baseline, if you are operating an incident and they can assess your heart rhythm and rate and you exceed your baseline, they'll get a signal back at the command post before you have that, God forbid, stress-induced heart attack.
Yeah.
They're working with Darley now on drones, all right, and video cameras on the apparatus where that could be, the image could be in front of the command post.
Sure.
They're changing, and I'm happy to be on board. And I'm just a consultant. All I do is sit at the table and say, "That ain't gonna work. That ain't gonna work." And they go back and they fix it. And they go, "All right, that would work at 3:00 in the morning." Now, I try to bring the reality. And there's a group of us on board. A couple of us from Jersey, New York, out in LA County.
Nice.
And these young guys, these high-tech guys, I'm going to guarantee you're going to see them in a very, very big way.
I love that.
Yeah, 3aminnovations.com. Let's have your listeners check them out.
So that's a cool story. This is a cool kind of lead into where I want to go with this now, right? Is 44 years of the fire service, you're a traditionalist, man.
Yeah.
Like tried and true tradition. Halligan, force a door, line goes in, fire goes out,
Right.
We're on the roof,
Right.
We cut holes, we throw ladders.
I know where you're going.
And we go home.
Go ahead.
And now you're sitting on a test panel of a technology-driven company that wants to better the fire service through technology.
Yes.
So cool, because I think too often we get wrapped up in both sides of it, and we never find the workable common ground between tradition and new.
Yep.
Talk about that.
Well, this is a great question. And the panel that I sit on, we're all senior people. When I say senior people, we've been around the block
Sure.
sometimes. Company officers, chief officers. And their mindset by bringing us on board, if we can convince them, all right, it's going to actually work.
Yeah.
In the first few meetings I was in, I would be shaking my head. I go,
Thanks for the flight out to Chicago. We're
yeah, I would say to the guys, I go, I have enough to do. I can't be sanctioned with, looking at a computer screen. But they would make it so easy and measurable that you would want to gravitate to take a glance at the screen. And what they've done, and they've done a great job with this, they realize they're not going to change what we do because we all, I don't care what city or town you're from, we all have a way of managing our resources.
without a doubt.
I was big on this because I had the responsibility, I had the rank, I had the bars and the collar. When I put people in the building, I knew where they were somewhere in the footprint. But as the building got a bigger footprint, I would lose them. I know there's some place on the 7th floor. I know there's some place in the sub-basement. But what they have done is not replace what we currently do as simple 2 + 2 = 4 guys. They're enhancing it.
Right.
And they wrap their arms around it. They're letting the technology come in and letting us feather it in on stuff that's measurable. That's going to make a difference. All right. When they did the biometrics thing, I can't tell you how many friends I lost to stress-induced heart attacks.
All too
Or
prevalent.
you get to Mayday and you don't know where the guy is, but their icon will pop up and tell you on their system, the Florian system, exactly where the individual is. Geographically on the floor, if you know he was on the seaside. I'm looking at this thing. I wish I had that 25 years ago. So, and the nice part about it, one of the co-founders, Patrick, out of Buffalo, he's a volunteer firefighter. And what inspired him is he lost 2 firefighters in a neighboring department due to a lost, disoriented group of firefighters who just got lost in the mix.
Right.
And that inspired him and motivated him to hook up with his partner, Ryan, who was a tech guy who, when he talks, I have to hold on to the table because he's so articulate that I can relate to it.
Yep.
And he would say, what do you think? And I go, just turn that a little bit.
Tweak it.
Push that button.
Yeah.
And they listen. All right, because they know if we don't buy into it as these old guys, I'm not going to be able to talk to a Boston chief or a chief from a little town in North Dakota or whatever it may be, because they're going to say that's too much. I said no, this part will work, and let me show you how. Yeah. So I'm really happy to be able to sit and listen and talk to these guys because they're outstanding.
I think though too, you have an open mind.
Yes.
I know a lot of older guys, a lot of salty dogs that. They don't have such an open mind sometimes,
Absolutely.
And so you try to find that balance, or you find the 1 or 2 guys that can broker the balance between the new and old, the young and old, and so on. But it's nice to hear that. I think having a panel of experienced firefighters to take in the possibility of some new technology to better ourselves, that's a home run, Chief.
Yeah. If it's there, you got to wrap your arms around it.
Yeah.
So how could you
I like
ignore
that?
it?
That's a good way to put it.
A common thread I'm seeing is you said that it was measurable, and it was just like you can show that. That totally goes back to your paper trail. So whether it's having somebody drop from a heart attack in a fire or having not enough people to staff a crew on a certain day, like the fact that you show these results, that's what makes it real. And you're open to logic, and I think that's really great. And so you said you're 2 + 2 = 4 guy.
I'm a
like
big
it's all
guy, yeah.
logic driven.
I was never a E = MC² guy. Even when I talked that in my seminars, I said, if you're looking for that I can't bring that. But these guys have brought it to the table for me, and they brought it into a 2 + 2 = format for an old guy like me to say, you know what, that's going to make a difference today. That part,
That's the
I
key
want
to
that.
change.
And again, I wish I met these guys. I joke at them at a meeting. I said, I met you guys 25 years ago, but you were both in diapers, So, but again, 3 a.m. Innovations.
Good.
They're great.
Nice. I'm
great
looking
group.
forward to
pretty cool people. Really
looking
cool.
forward to hear more about them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will.
That's
and
cool.
they're up in Buffalo.
They're in Buffalo, New York. Yeah.
We know how to get there.
So you got the promotional prep
Yes.
and all your other projects. I want to talk about something else that got thrown out to me today about Chief Mike Terpak, flow path.
Oh God. Okay.
Well, I think it's so.
I'm okay. I'm prepared for this, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, I see you have some notes too. So if there's a couple things you want to hop on too. But I think what the conversation very quickly was, hey, ask Chief Terpak about the UL testing and the flow path.
Right.
And I'll tell you why, because the brief conversation I had was this is that term that for the last few years now is out there, and I think everybody takes away something different from that
Absolutely.
term.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a disconnect with the conversation, and there's two different camps, obviously, right?
Right.
Then there's some middle ground,
Yes.
right? Can you just, I don't have a direct question for you on it, but I do know that you're a traditionalist in the sense that the line goes in, the fire goes out. We've always ventilated. There's always been flow path, if you will.
Oh, sure.
Right? You create the environment.
It's a new word.
It's a new word for something that's been going on for a very, very long time.
Long time.
So just some takes on it, right? I know where I stand on it, and these guys, I mean, everybody's got their take on it, but I also think that there's a lot of misinformation out there, too.
I think that it's being packaged by some
Packaged.
and,
That's
and presented in a harmful
Very good way.
Yeah, yeah. I actually wrote a program on it called Transitional Attack, Not Always. And I'll say the UL people, Underwriters Lab, everything they're doing is outstanding. They're doing tremendous work. I mean, I hope they continue doing it. And when they put their stuff out there, they put it out in such a way that, they're telling you, take a look at this. We're just trying to bring some new information to you based on BTU generations and legacy versus modern. Excellent information. And I looked at it and go, wow, this is great intel. But then there would be certain people who were influential. What I mean by influential, it could be a fire officer talking at the kitchen table to his members. It could be an instructor at the academy, or it could be somebody who writes an article.
Right.
Let's say, and this is the thing that probably set me off on this, and I won't go too far. There was a seminar someplace, I'm not going to mention where. It was called "We've Been Doing It Wrong," and I remember a friend of mine from Atlanta called me, and he told me, I go, you're joking, seriously? And again, that was the premise behind that. And that's not what UL said.
No, right.
I mean, that's not what they were. They were
Correct.
just giving you more information in your toolbox to be aware of the dynamics, the changes, the ceiling heights, everything that was causing fires to be much more hotter and violent today. But it was the people who had something on their collar who would get an audience, and now they become like speaking gospel. And I said, well, wait a minute here. That's not exactly what they're saying. And I go, it has a place, but not always. And I said, maybe for your department, maybe because of reduced staffing and long stretches, you have to maybe dump your gun in a window. Dark, got it. We've been dumping guns in windows, darkening it down since I was 16 years old.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But I know the fires have changed over the years for some. But I still, and I have to bring my backyard up. I still have the old frame and brick tenements. I still have the old balloon frames. They haven't changed.
Right.
So I still have to, on a lower floor fire in an occupied multiple dwelling, for me, that line's got to get the interior staircase. And I don't care who you are or where you're from. If you have that same building, and you and I are not going to get along.
That's right.
But if you have a 4,000 to 5,000 square foot building, it's sticking out 3 or 4 windows, and you need to darken it down because you don't have enough people to make that sweep, to make that turn, all the other variables that go with it.
Absolutely.
It has a place, but again, not always. And my objective by doing that seminar and talking a little bit about it in the book is just to say, hey, listen to everybody and make your own decision, be informed on what works in your backyard. Don't worry about my backyard. Worry about your backyard, your staffing, your building dynamics, the setbacks, whatever it may be. Get more information, become more informed, and no one's going to, I would never allow anyone to tell me you've been doing it wrong. I said, we've been doing pretty good. Right.
Yep.
Right.
Well said, Chief. And I think that's why I wanted to just bring that up, because what you mentioned before, how it's packaged. And, there's not a lot of new happening in the fire service. Right. But there's a lot of new people coming out to train and teach and talk. And so they're taking old style, throwing something new into it, a new twist or a new title, or you've been doing it wrong, and now they have a whole new program on it. Yeah. And I think we got to be careful there.
Very much so. We
got to be careful because tried and true methodology wins. There might be some fine tweaks, but again, there's no absolutes in this job.
No.
None.
No.
But we do know that we need to be an aggressive fire service. The line needs to go in. We need to ventilate. We need to open up. We need to search for fire victims.
I'm still a firm believer in my time in the fire service. You put a line in the front door. You put a line between fire and people. You protect the primary means of egress. All right, you're going to save more people in my backyard with that line placed in that location more times than putting it in a window from the sidewalk. That's my experience.
I don't think you're going to catch any different opinion here. And that's well said, Chief. Absolutely. So I thank you for your thoughts on that, because I know, I love being able to sit back and talk to guys with the street experience and knowledge and the pedigree behind them to really take a position on something like this. And I think it's important because not everything that's out there and not every class that's taught and idea that is given. And I like how you put it all together, where whether it's the kitchen table or the local guy at the fire academy or on a national class scale, the message is getting out. And if it's getting out incorrectly, or we're putting too much on one emphasis of the argument, we're going to lose.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good. I thank you for that. That was cool.
I was glad I was able to maintain my temper.
I didn't really push, Chief.
No. I say that jokingly.
I know that,
but
of course.
It's a
Of
great
course.
subject. It really is.
So I want to ask you, with everything that you've done in this incredible career, what's next for retired Chief?
Well, as long as I'm able
Michael
to walk
Terpak.
and talk, I'm going to still, write a little bit. I'm still going to talk a little bit. And I was very lucky. I was very busy doing all this before, of course, the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that 2021 is going to be a better year for everyone in a number of different ways. So I'll be back out in the teaching circuit. People are starting to reschedule all the things that we canceled. So I'm going to still be out there as long as I can, because I still love what I do. I'm very passionate.
And you got, I love that. Good. Yeah. So anything else, guys, on the panel for the Chief? Because I think tonight was just a fantastic conversation.
No, I've had a blast. Thank you.
We're going to have you back again, because this is just the tip of the iceberg. And I really think tonight was just a great episode. But I want to round out with, where can everybody find you? If they want to get a hold of you, how do they contact you? Let's talk about social media for a minute before we even give out your handles and where they can find you. You've been putting a little more and more out. I've seen you on Instagram and Facebook and so on.
Yeah.
But, can you talk about this is a good one. Talk about your struggles with that. How hard is it to maybe not hard, but
What are the challenges?
The challenges
associated with getting into social media.
After turning the phone on, you mean? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. It's like Tucker just got an iPhone like last week. So he's
I mean, I had a rotary dial phone up until about 2 months ago. No, I'm joking when I say that. We mentioned before we started the program here, I have twin daughters. They're 22 now, but I was like, what's Facebook? Can you help me?
Right.
What's Instagram? Can you help me? So, and they took the phone and they were set up the accounts and whatnot.
Here, Dad. You're like,
Yeah,
now
absolutely.
what?
Yeah. And of course, I talked to a couple other colleagues who were doing a little bit longer than me and what they were doing, and I'm starting to catch on. I kind of like it,
Good.
And I'll take pictures of fires, or I'll take snapshots of certain sections of the book chapter, and I'll introduce that with a little story, and I'll say, look at pages 78, 79, and 80. Take a look at this and add to it, make it better. I did something like that today on taxpayers and strip malls. So, and when you see the responses, it's kind of like when you get that feedback, I get a little bit more motivated. All right, I'm gonna do another one in another week. I'll do another one in another week. So, and because of that, you get a couple more people follow you and then send me a question on Messenger, and it keeps the dialogue going, keeps the passion alive. So it's another outlet for me.
Yes.
Still be involved.
Yeah, I love that.
And I love it. I really
Well,
do.
I want to see more out of you. I'm going to challenge you with that tonight.
I bet you will.
Outside of this, but I see value in it, because I think, and this is how we started this conversation. There's certain people in this business that deserve attention, and we need to get the attention there on the level, on the playing fields and the platforms that people are paying attention to and listening to.
Right.
And I think, Chief, that you have an incredible message to share, whether it's everything packaged under this hard binder of your book, or it's your just personal experiences that haven't even made it to the third edition yet. Right. I think you have stories to share that can better all of us as a fire service and myself as an individual firefighter. So I challenge you to put more out. More is good.
Absolutely.
And we'd love to see
I
it.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
I promise you I will.
Good. Good.
Well.
All right, so where can we find you if people want to reach out? They want to do a class with you. They want to just send you a question. They want to ask
Well, you can
who
get-
does your hair. Like, where can they find you?
I got a whole team of people.
Yeah.
You can catch me on Instagram at Mike Terpak, obviously. Facebook, Mike Terpak Fire Service Training and Consulting. You can email me at FireGround Size-Up mt@gmail.com. It's probably the 3 best ways to reach
Awesome.
out. And I'll definitely get back to you and share a story, help you with a class, whatever I could do. I just love doing it. As, obviously, everyone here does.
Well, and listen, tonight I think was fantastic. What a great episode. This is one of our first episodes really back from COVID, back in the studio. So for you to be here tonight and your willingness to be a part of this, thank you.
Oh, thank you for the invite.
Yeah, please, open invite anytime. Chief Terpak, thank you. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll get all your handles up on our social media so everybody will know where to find you and so on. And I challenge you with your social media. And I just want to say thank you. It was an absolute pleasure to meet you tonight for the first time.
Yes, right.
Looking forward to a long friendship together here with National Fire Radio and the rest of the crew. Yes. But looking forward to our next go around.
It was great.
And
I had an excellent time. Thank
Cool.
you so much.
Good. Guys, for everybody listening, thank you so much. I always let Rob take us out. You got this?
Yeah, man, I got it.
I thought he was sleeping.
I would never allow that to happen.
Not in the front row.
No.
Not in the front row.
Not in the front
I was
row,
watching
everybody.
Rob the whole time.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, this is Rob from National Fire Radio, who's been paying attention the whole time. I'm like Tucker. No, but seriously, everybody, thanks for joining us tonight. Retired Deputy Chief Michael Terpak, Jeremy, Heather, myself.
And the old man. Have a good one.
Take care, guys. Thank you so much.